more than 2 decades ago, we started on our journey to develop and research AIs that can truly understand us and reason with us. And fast forward in 2021, we finally had AIs that had common sense reasoning capabilities, which is so foundational that we knew would be the element that we need for building the most helpful AI for the world. And that is precisely why we started Verneek. So in the middle of the pandemic, I remember walking in this Madison Square Park of ours, where Amit and I would talk for hours and hours about what it would take to build the most helpful AI. And the more we talked and the more we walked, the more we realized that the industry to make a bet on is consumer retail. So retailers, turns out, employ the most number of employees on the back office, and of course they serve the most number of consumers in aggregate in the front office. So if only you can make an impact, it will be in that industry to help drive their top line while optimizing for their bottom line, and that's why we went into consumer retail.
The largest issue that we have found in enterprise is silos they have created across all their functions, all the data they have. That's why they cannot create a consistent experience for their customers, their employees. To solve that, we have created an AI native platform that tries to break all those silos, bring all the data from different sources, put them together and create an experience for the customers and employees that is unique, it is consistent, and it is accurate. One great example in retail is how a product becomes available to the customers. It's actually an interesting journey that goes through many functions in the retail industry. It starts from the vendors and brands giving some information about the product, and this goes through many silos to become available at the end to the customers. This consistent way of setting up product actually pays off in many different ways. It adds more attributes, it creates a more consistent messaging, and makes it much easier to do analytics. It took us a long time to build this platform. A lot of models that we had to train to create these experiences. There are a lot of software that we had to build, a lot of things that have been reimagined from scratch, how to think about system of records, how to think about consistency, how to think about human in the loop. These things are complex when you wanted to put them together, but when you put them together, it's magical.
I love New York. It's as real as it gets. The best food, best people from all around the world, and I genuinely don't think there's any better place to build a real world AI that transform businesses but in New York.
Microsoft Research, Google AI, Benevolent AI. She is a data scientist extraordinaire and the visionary behind this company, and she's going to come up and tell us a little bit more about what lies ahead in Commonsense AI.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming. It's such an absolute pleasure. It's actually the third time we are hosting this dinner during the NRF Big Show. And as Robin was saying, it's so much in line with our DNA to do this in New York, the city that we love, which is where we started the company. And it's really awesome to have you all with us today to talk about the most basic thing, which is common sense. So the goal is to spend just a few minutes together. We changed it a little bit as a format from the last few years to make it so that you get a sense of the story of the company. There's so much noise about AI, so much hype, if you will, and as people that have spent our lifetimes on AI, it deserves a moment to just pause and reflect as to what it all really means for the bottom line of this industry that we all really love. So I'm titling this little talk of mine to you guys today, The Future of Consumer Experiences. And to me, of course, in a very biased way, it's synonymous with the future of AI native experiences, which means AIs that were built in this actual new revolution of AI, which belongs to the last handful years, almost 5 years ago. We started actually, both Amit and myself, my co-founder, we started on AI from robotics. And this was the state of AI 20 years ago. when we were actually started in the field. And I'm showing that to tell you that we've come a very long way. But interestingly, even 20 years ago, which is literally where Omid and I met, in robotics competitions in Germany of all places, we saw firsthand that turns out solving for these multi-agent systems that can actually play a game of soccer or do any other task in the real physical world wasn't the hardest thing about AI. It turns out the hardest thing was actually the easiest things for us as human beings. So there's this thing called Moravec's paradox, which became the obsession of my life at a young age, which drove me to actually change gears and work on this problem called common sense reasoning, which basically is to focus back on the most fundamental basic reasoning capabilities of a child, of a 2-year-old child. So the motivating example that got me into the field of common sense, which has everything to do with tonight, was this. So this classical example goes as follows. It says the monkey ate the banana because it was hungry. So what do you think it, the pronoun, refers to? Is it the monkey that was hungry or is it the banana that was hungry? Anyone? The banana. There you go. Pauline is absolutely right. Yes, well, we all know the right answer. It's the monkey. And why is that? Because we all have this very basic common sense ability. Even a 2-year-old of yours can, solve this. For those of you that may remember also when your kids were younger, it's a very commonsensical thing, right? Anyone can solve it. But guess what? This was the hardest problem for machines to solve 20 years ago. So much so that both Omid and myself dedicated our entire scientific background in AI to solve for that very, very niche problem. And why is that? It's because we realized that it's actually this last building block that you would need to bring it all together to finally imbue machines with our intelligence, with human-grade intelligence, if you will. And fast forward, believe it or not, this very problem, that very example, classical example, was unsolved for 20 years. And finally, this is my Halloween costume 3 years ago. Believe it or not, finally we had LLMs that could solve for this problem. And I went as the monkey and banana for my Halloween. So we've come a very long way. This is definitely the most thrilling time of our lives for both, Omid and myself and so many other AI scientists whose niche field of science suddenly became this thing that could truly disrupt the entire world in so many good and, of course, ultimately perhaps not so good ways. But for us, the reason we started Verneek, our company soon enough, in about a month, would be officially 5 years old, which blows my own mind. And so 5 years ago when we started Verneek, our goal genuinely was to just help, to see what we can do in this real world out of the lab setting that will truly transform the society as we know it. And with that, very much so, we knew that the building block of common sense reasoning was finally getting solved for. So we were ready to be able to build these AI helpers that could actually help the underlying, basically, use cases in real world. So that became our focus from the very, very beginning. We were the polar opposite of AGI, artificial general intelligence. We were all about actually specific AI and deep domain expert AI as opposed to generic AI, because we believe that in order to help, you have to be focused and in domain. So with that, we knew that we were ready to build these AIs that can ingest basically data and start being helpful. And the more we studied different industries, the more we realized that, as I was saying in the video, the industry that truly needs the most amount of help because of how complex its operation is consumer retail. So consumer retailers, of course, have to deal with lots of complexities on front office, on back office, and so on and so forth. And if only you could build true AI helpers that can help all the business functions in parallel and with synergy together, it will be in this domain. And that chaotic word can go into potentially this calm and collected world, if you will, if you only drop those little intelligent beings that are interconnected to make it so that the end-to-end operation of retail is truly what we call AI native. And so what do I mean by all of that? And what did we actually conclude to do to truly be the most helpful to the bottom line of the retailers? So we realized that if we want to look at the end-to-end operation of retailers and consumer brands as well, it really boils down to these 4 canonical stages. So you first go through design/merchandising. You don't have to design your own brands, but at the end of the day, how you design your collection or curation of items is a design. So design/merchandising is the first thing you have to do to decide what it is that you even want to sell. And then number 2, you have to attract. So how do you drive foot traffic? How do you go about making it so that customers come and spend their dollar with you as opposed to the next door neighbor at the end of the day? And then ultimately you want to engage with them so that they can close. And finally, you want the ones that shop with you to come back. So in this basically flywheel of retail and really consumer brands, if you will, it was clear for us that if we find very concrete use cases that will have the most amount of bottom line impact, we have basically won the game of bringing the most value to drive the P&L of any given enterprise. So what did we find out? We found out that, for instance, in the design stage, if only we help a retailer or a consumer brand do a better job in merchandising and the decisions that are made to buy, right, or basically make a bet on themselves to how to price, etc., they will be able to do a lot to cut their costs and ultimately drive sales. So AI native product information management is one such solution that we found the most amount of efficacy out of. We saw that we can increase the or reduce really the cost by 90+%, which is crazy. Like the process through which an item gets set up and enriched and ultimately sold is actually pretty lengthy and pretty pricey. So you can really show tremendous ROI if only you help augment human beings who historically have been doing merchandising jobs on the back office, not to mention how much faster that will be, not to mention, of course, how much more accurate that will be because of the fact that human beings who do these jobs often make mistakes. So in the design stage, there's tremendous value that you can create consistently to know your products better so that you can price them better and ultimately drive the sales in the digital or physical channels. And then, of course, fast forward to the tracked. How do you make it so that the foot traffic comes? The old school ways of doing marketing are just literally, they belong to 2 decades ago, if not more. What you can do through AI native way of approaching your customers to attract them in an AI native way is to actually be truly personalized. So you can see here, you can truly increase the revenue that you drive to the bottom line of your company if you know who is the target audience and approach them at the right time, right place, with the right message so that they can come either to your digital channels where you can engage with them or, of course, ultimately the physical channel. So this is like an example of a stylist that is there on any e-com website to help put a look together if it's fashion, or ultimately inside a store, if a store associate or a salesperson wants to recommend something, they will have a helper in the form of our AI that consistently can put a look for them together or help them find the exact item that they're looking to buy and so on and so forth in the most personalized, again, way, consistently with how the experience would have been in the former channel. And of course, another thing is about consistency, the same experience on an e-com website, the search bars, the dumb keyword search bars of 20 years old legacy systems will go out of the window, and the same AI that was now setting up your products in the back office, that was helping the sales associates to recommend things, is now helping the customers in the self-service way to find their way around on an e-com website. On the product description pages, helps AI recommendations. On a chat way, helps them basically have a conversation to do customer care and beyond. So these are all part of the same engaged experiences. And of course, finally, retain. So you do all this hard work of making it so that you attract people to come to you and then finally make a sale, but then you very well may drop the ball on ever knowing how they liked it, if they had problems, and how to entice them to go to you as opposed to the next door neighbor tomorrow. So there are parts of the AI native platform of ours that are just designed to do that so that you can attract them, again, to basically retain them. And we have all the ROI in the world to show how that actually is finally the way to close the loop on all of this in the consumer retail world. So the basically 4 stages end up being synergistic the second you break down those silos and you bring this consistent consumer experience all together in the form of this true flywheel of retail, if you will. So we have all these solutions that we basically bring together to truly manifest, if you will, that future of AI native consumer experiences through very concrete, again, very particular use cases that are now battle hardened with Fortune 500 customer of ours. And if I want to bring it all together in the form of one slide, it is to say that I believe the future of consumer experiences are all seamlessly consistent as opposed to being siloed, so that you can get the same exact care across channel, the same exact answers across channel, which literally never ever was possible. So this is only thanks to the technology. And it is hyper-personalized at each touch point. So if someone knows you in the store, that person, quote unquote, which will be an AI, would know you when you go inside a digital environment as well in the same way, and would care for you at that touch point. And ultimately, it is all delightful. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
And thank you. I've been listening to a lot of AI talks, and I feel like we are constantly talking about agentic AI, and it's nice to know that you've given AI this human face, this human mind, where we all know that the banana didn't eat the monkey, but there is a world where the banana did eat the monkey, and I don't want to live in that world. Agentic AI also reminds me of Men in Black and makes me feel like I'm probably not going to be meeting the nice version of Will Smith if I do end up out there. But I'm glad to hear sort of where you're taking this. And now I'm going to hand it over to Jason Del Rey to talk about what is the common sense of it all, the reality of what AI can and cannot do in retail. Now he's a lucky guy because he's the one who gets
so lucky.
He gets to
Just don't
ask all the tough questions.
Am I right here?
I think you're all the way at the end. You get to ask all the exciting questions to your illustrious panel. Some of the panelists are in the news. Some of them are not here because they are in the news, because they did not want to show up to confirm or deny any of the shortlists that they might be on. But lucky for us, we do have Philippe Schaus.
Yeah, I'm not in the news.
Who's always
make you in the news.
Yeah, he's always in the news. And he did teach me something new tonight, that when you drink sparkling wine, you drink it out of a Pinot Gris glass and not a flute, in order to have a better experience. And he also was gracious enough to select all the wines. So if you think about the humanity of the wine selection and the fact that Philippe was the CEO of Moët. He knows a lot, and he's now also...
So don't
Yes.
judge me now on what I'm going to say, but rather on the quality of the wine you're drinking.
He also had to, he's an investor, so he also had to work with a budget as well, because he knows how to spend the smart money. The other fantastic panelist that I'm excited to introduce is Karenann Terrell. She was, for those of you who know her intimately, you can call her Kat. And maybe we all know each other intimately now because
Just
we're
friends, okay?
breaking bread. But she was a longtime CIO council member when I was at the Wall Street Journal, and so our paths crossed at that point, but she was CIO of Walmart and is now Chief Digital Officer, CIO and CTO of retired, GSK, and now she is one of the few women managing directors of AI funds and investing actively in this new layer of technology that is transforming our lives. And so I will let you take it away, Jason.
It's all mine. Just to give quick context on myself, I'm a longtime technology journalist, have covered e-commerce and future retail for about a dozen years. The future keeps coming, apparently. I recently launched my own publication called The Aisle, readtheaisle.com for anyone who wants to check it out. And it's focused on AI in commerce, how AI is reshaping the way we buy and sell, and also what's hype and what's not, which is a great place to start. So you all have seen various technology transformations over your career. I'm wondering how this moment compares to other cycles of hype you've experienced over the last decades.
Yeah, let me start. So I have been involved with retail for almost all my career, and being at the base an aerospace engineer by training, I was always
retail.
I was always obsessed with performance of retail. And looking at performance, of course, you look at the back office performance, which the customer doesn't see, and you look at the front office performance, which is really what drives the customer to be excited. I mean, I've been in luxury. In luxury, you are not answering a need of a customer. You are creating a desire, and then you are satisfying that desire in the most efficient and, I would say, experiential way for your consumer. And in that time, of course, there have been innovations. I mean, think about the barcode, what it did, or think about RFID. I mean, these are typically back office improvements which help to run logistics more efficiently, to manage inventories better, etc., etc. Then, of course, you had e-commerce. I mean, you had internet in general, which touched a lot of things. Then you had e-commerce. When e-commerce came, of course, first luxury didn't want to get into it. We were really frightened that it would kind of take away the magic of shopping, until we understood that actually it was the whole clicks and bricks concept, that actually internet was there to allow you to select and buy from the comfort and luxury of your home, and to then go to the store and enjoy the experience in the store. And once we understood that idea, we went into e-commerce. But contrary to what people were thinking at that time, people were saying, oh, e-commerce, there will be, if you are not e-commerce, you don't exist anymore, traditional retail is going to disappear, etc. It didn't disappear, it complemented each other. And that was very good outcome. Then you had some, I would say, fads like the blockchain idea that you had to have products with certificates and things like that. We did some of them. I mean, I did not at that time understand what was the value to the customer to have a blockchain certificate going with a bottle of whiskey. But still, we sold it very expensively. We made big articles in the press. We were the first ones to use blockchain. It was a fad. It was just a marketing tool, and then some other people came into the meta world, so we didn't go into that because that looked even more crazy to think that you would have shops in the meta world, but some did it, and some purchased Gucci bags in the meta world, which didn't exist physically, and in the meta world, their representative or their was carrying that Gucci bag which they had paid for, almost as much as for the real Gucci bag they could wear on the street. So they were fads. Now, where is AI there? Well, AI is everywhere. AI is almost like, I would think it's like the steam engine in the Industrial Revolution. I mean, it touches everything. And it's a way to get everything more efficient. So that's also where having an AI department or having AI centered in your IT department, digital department, makes no sense.
We're gonna get to that in a second. So just to summarize, so you're basically saying this moment doesn't really compare to anything you've seen yet. Am I summarizing correctly?
Absolutely correct.
Kat, I'm curious about your thoughts on this moment and the hype around it, reality beneath the hype or not.
So I think call it hype at your peril, because I think maybe the speed expectation may be different, but the depth of impact that it will have on, I think, all parts of our life. And it's not something that will hit a single age group. It will be across all age groups, whether it's invisible AI that's being implemented into processes that people don't understand, or whether it's direct use of AI tools, the way that we have started in this hype cycle with LLMs of, I'm going to use my LLM. I think the depth and breadth of it is really unparalleled to anything that has happened. And I'm old enough to have remember the pre-internet days, having worked in technology, and the post-internet. And this is going so much faster, so much further. And I think that we are still in the real inner ring of impact that we're going to see. I think the other one quick thing that I would say is the comparison of AI, I think, is one that we're really trying to grapple with. And if you think about living in a world without connectivity, and I'm not talking about the internet, I'm just talking about connectivity, the ability to reach to all parts of Earth and beyond Earth, for us to actually have real-time business opportunities, for us to know what we know when we know it. That is one aspect of what AI could change the world like, but I think it's going to go much further and much faster than that, which is why it's so important for us. You know, I'm not talking to 20-year-olds in the room here. 20-year-olds are going to have to get on with this, or they're not going to have careers and they're not going to progress. It's really important for us as decision makers to have a moment to say, I'm not going to think about this superficially, or I'm not going to leave this to somebody else in my company to do. I'm going to embrace it personally.
Well, let's talk about, but you both kind of touched on this point about where, you know, AI vision lives within a company, and we talked about this a little bit when we met virtually on a call to prep for this. What are you seeing in where sort of AI decision making and vision setting lives within organizations, and how do you look at where is the right and wrong place for this vision to originate? I don't know, I feel like you have some thoughts there.
Yeah, I would say, yes, first of all, I mean, of course it sits in a way everywhere in the organization. So it sits at the top. So the top leadership team has to define a strategy. Then, of course, you need a governance, and you need some rules. You need a governance about a sense of ethics about how you go after it. Then it is really about cross-functional teams who are going to work on the different topics. I mean, talk about the example we saw before with Nasrin about PMI, I mean, product management information, PIM, product information management. Yeah. I mean, it's if you start working on that, I mean, it touches your logistics, your purchasing, such as what's happening at the point of sale. So it's all consistent, supply. So it's all consistent, and so you need cross-functional teams to address that. So somehow you have to elevate it to a high level of the organization, with top leadership being clearly involved and clearly close to it, because it goes beyond the usual silos. And I come from an organization where there is a central IT department and there's a separate central digital department and things like that. That makes it very difficult to get anything done.
Sounds almost impossible.
Yeah, it's very difficult to make it consistent. So you have to try to overcome these kind of structures to find ways to make it much more seamless throughout the organization, because otherwise you are missing a big part of the benefit by just if you stay in the old siloed models.
Yeah, you know, I'm going to disagree a bit.
Do it, please.
Because I'm the tech guy, right?
Yeah.
I come out of the tech organization, and AI starts with data and the use of data. And I think the very interesting place that we're at with regards to how we want to manage and use AI is that there will be as much AI from the ecosystem and on the outside than is created on the inside. It just, and every time I meet somebody that says we're going to do all our AI inside, I sell their stock. It is the first, and like, you know, are you public? Let's get rid of that
Can you
from
give
my
us that
stock
list,
portfolio.
so-
I have a few, just let me know later, Jason. But because the speed at which this is moving, especially within various domains, whether it's consumer domains or energy or retail, is not going to be able to be managed of, I've got all my data and I'm going to do those things. And so I think there are, I believe that the culture of an organization will tell you where and how the ownership of something this disruptive needs to sit. And I don't think in organizations like Walmart, where I was from, it came from a bottom up. There need to be sponsorship, but you had to have two in a box. And I think it's massively important. And are there any people from HR here? Yeah, because these are the truly uninformed for the most part. They actually have to be in the box because there's such massive people change that's taking place with regards to AI that when a technologist comes together, they need to think about having a two in the box, because you can have a top-down direction of inspecting what you expect, funding, having priorities, those types of things, but the real scaling to get from something that is a good idea into the broader organization, I think it's going to take both people change and it's going to take technology change. So I agree there's a leadership element, but I also think that this has such a fundamental outside-in change function that you've got to get people involved. And I also think the reason it's moving so slow these days is that AI inside of enterprises seems to be moving not at the speed that it needs to, or at least the market is expecting it to move, is because it's not because proof of concepts are wrong. It's that the actual change that's going to take place to the merchants or to the supply chain operators or the frontline associates has got to have a really transformative thought process that goes along with the models. This is one of the reasons I like Verneek is they don't try to attack it from a tech point of view. They actually just look at it people in tech.
Is there, and we're going to have time for some questions in a bit, so I'll call on people if I have to, but we had a nice chat in the back. You're number one. But I'm curious, is there opportunity to actually break down silos? You know, you're talking about sort of some of the silos in your former organization. Through this disruption, is that necessary, or do organizations not sort of have to flatten out? I guess you're talking about sort of cross-functional teams, which maybe is a piece of that. But I'm curious about the future structure. Maybe this is what you're alluding to, not to Cap.
I tend to think that yes, there's some silos you have to break, there's some cross-functionality which you have to create, which didn't exist, because you are addressing, I mean, especially in this philosophy which Nasrin described before, you are really addressing a performance optimization potential which reaches its overall potential if it touches all these different functions. So it's no longer that you just do this or you just do this, but you do this all together to get the best benefits. So it means that you have to move more to a team of teams organization than to a vertical and siloed organization you may have had before.
Yeah, and I think we get overly broad sometimes when we think about breaking down silos because, and this is what scares a lot of executives are, you know, the model is going to ingest all the data and then they're going to be able to ask about the salaries of the guy that works next to you. Okay, like let's get out of science fiction and actually look at reality. Vertical AI is around solving a problem in assortment and assortment management. Or it's about solving a problem in supply chain and inventory optimization that discrete technology could not solve. And I really, really think that this breaking down of silos comes when the data that's available in the company can be used and acted on by many, many different groups. It is the property and the owned data of the company. Why should a merchant and a supply chain and an associate not have the same information? In today's world, those silos that's a merchandising system, and it has all these little widgets of how they do merchandising, not available to the frontline associate. This is so powerful in retail. It is incredibly powerful in any consumer company where you want the various constituents to have access to the data. I think that's a powerful silo break. Not put all the information into one model and let everybody query it because, you know, financial and strategic data is not going in the model, FYI. I don't know many companies where that's going to happen.
On the data point, you know, when we first spoke, you were talking about a little bit about the idea of, you know, some of these systems are only as good as, you know, how good the data going in is. And that reminds me of some of the conversations I've had at NRF with some retailers and brands. They're specifically talking about, you know, thinking about selling on the LLMs through these new checkout processes, and the fact that they don't necessarily feel ready because their data is not even in a good enough place to answer similar queries on their own site. So I guess I'm asking about the idea of quality data and what organizations have to be thinking about getting right before they're even thinking about implementing some of these powerful systems that you were talking about.
So here's the thing. Organizations don't have dirty data. They have real data that's come off their POS, that's come from their websites, that's come from all of these. What they don't have is a really clear taxonomy and framework and structure around which their data is ingested to be meaningful. And in the discrete world where we had just discrete technology, it was super dumb. It needed perfect data in order to be able to pull the right answer. We are in a paradigm where we have LLMs with capabilities, and especially LLMs or small language models that have the taxonomy of your business. Retail has store level language that's the same whether you're selling footwear or jewelry or you're in the furniture business. We all talk about retail in the same way. And I think that is my great hope, is that this taxonomy, when you have these small language models, and believe me, outside of maybe Walmart and Amazon, we don't have retailers who have the heft of knowledge about the whole taxonomy of retail to do it themselves. And so I think that's the really fun part about AI and data, is you start to see small language models that is going to make sense of the data. But if you've got really dirty, nasty data inside your organization, I would ask you how you're closing your books every week, month.
I'd like to write about those companies if anyone has that dirty, nasty data. Just come see me after.
There's a few that might be in bankruptcy lately, but I do think that it is being able to make sense of the data that you have, and AI isn't a magic wand for that, but it's helping bit by bit.
Anything to add? Or
No. It's perfect.
Maybe one final one, and then I'll see if anyone in the audience has questions for my esteemed speakers up here. Curious as companies are thinking about who to partner with on and outside of the direct relationships with LLM companies. Curious how you look at the advantages and disadvantages of AI native enterprise sellers versus legacy companies with sort of heft and expertise in the old way and this huge sales teams and huge technology organizations, but ones that are trying to make the shift. No, it's pretty broad. I'm curious for any thoughts.
You want to try first?
I'm going to have you start because I think one of the things that is not well understood is this idea of AI native versus AI applied, and you just had a great dialogue recently on that whole thing, because I think if we start with that, I'm going to add a couple more things.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I take it from another side and try to see if I come to where you want to come to. If you are selling a legacy system to retail, which you have been selling for the last 30 years, and it has improved all the time, and you have added version 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, and each time there's a new version, it's a great time to go and see your customers and say, hey, there's a new version, it's this and this and this and this, and you add this and this to it, and now we bring AI, and in this particular function there's also a little bit of AI, and it does this and it does that and all that. Then you are kind of working in a incredible constraint of what you're able to do and how you're able to use the data to really create intelligent improvements of what you do. Versus if you come and say, look, we take your data, we forget your systems for 1 second. We'll look at your data and we see how you can make this work for you in a different way. And we generate through your data, we generate insights and we generate ways of working. Then you come to a completely different outcome. And probably both are feasible and both make sense, but the outcome will be completely different. In one sense, you will optimize what is existing and you will do it a little bit better, and in the other case, you just revolutionize the way you utilize the data. When you see the example of how you get 90% improvement of efficiency in creating data, product data in a department store environment, 90% efficiency growth. So you go from 100 to 10. I mean, that is not possible in a iterative way based on old systems.
Yeah,
it's only feasible if you have a completely generative new way of looking at your data. Otherwise, you never get 90% efficiency. You will get 20% efficiency, or 10% or 30%, but never that level.
Yeah, because these processes that we're talking about, either you improve them through productivity. I'm going to take the toil out using an AI tool. It's going to get a little bit better. It's going to get a little bit better. And a lot of AI today is I'm going to use AI to help me in my process get better. And let me tell you, there's lots of money to be made at the EBITDA line on that one. There's no question about it on productivity. But an AI native looks at that and says, we're going to get that productivity, but we're also going to leave a big door open to reinvent this process. So let's go after getting the productivity, but let's leave the door open to do this in a different way. You don't have to rip up your process and start again. And some processes are just meant, if you're in the regulated world, they're meant to be just slightly improved and then incredibly improved, but never reinvented. Because regulators don't like reinvention around anything around money and health, and especially in the regulated sense. But we're talking about retail, where we sell something one day and it could change the next day. So I think get the productivity, but get the door open to actually a reinvention on process.
I'm going to use that hand maneuvering anytime I want something for my kids. Yeah. Leave it open. I like it.
But the bottom line
please.
is there is a huge, especially in retail, when we had all these internal discussions, we realized especially in multi-brands, multi-product retailing, there's a huge opportunity for generating efficiencies which have never been there. And you talk about massive savings of money, which then can be reinvested in communication, in services, in redesign, in things which are consumer facing and makes you a better retailer. I mean, that is what I'm just fascinated about, is that when you look at the amount of money in a multi-brand, multi-product retailing concept, which is spent on what is visible and positive for the consumer versus the machinery behind it to make it happen, I mean, you can completely change that balance towards having much more funds available for what the consumer sees and lives, and needing much less funds for having the machine run, if you have the audacity, and that's to your point, the audacity of revisiting your machine and saying maybe it's no longer a steam engine, but it's maybe a diesel motor, or maybe it's not a diesel motor, it's an electric motor, or whatever it is. If you have that audacity, and if you have the right partner to help you doing, and a partner who understands retail, because I think that is also on this learning curve. In my 2 years I've been involved with you guys, I see the learning curve is just tremendous for the company. I mean, what we know today, we didn't know in part 2 years ago. And every year we know more, and having, of course, some customers with which we go very, very far helps us to move very much up the learning curve. And so benefiting from that learning curve makes a huge difference.
I think we're going to do Q&A, and we're going to invite Nasreen up here. Do you want to join us?
Absolutely. Well, I
I think, Pauline, you have
big shoes of Geoffroy to fill, and a very tall height that I lack.
I was going to say you didn't show
the
up
stature.
because I'm actually the new CEO, and you didn't want to.
Oh, there you go. You got the announcement, everyone.
Do we have a question over there?
Or
a comment?
I have questions coming out of a couple of comments and reactions, and first of all, fascinating input.
Can you just tell us who you are?
Yes, Pauline Brown. And I guess the only relevant bullet to add to that is I was until the merger with Saks on the board of Neiman Marcus. So I have worked very closely with Geoffroy. So I would step in for the man who cannot be kept. I will tell you, just to pick up on the last thing you said, Philippe, is you're absolutely right. I mean, there's a lot of wastage in the system. If you take 90% out of it, people still don't want to go to department stores. And I don't think just taking the waste out gives many of the retail environments that we know today the capability or even the culture to create shoppable places. So there's two sides to this. And by the way, if they don't get that side right, then your business doesn't work either, because then you don't have clients. So there's a systemic problem. The second thing I wanted to it's just a comment, because I was thinking a little bit about your point again, Philippe, about the steamship. And I would even say this is maybe more precisely, this is like electricity, right? And if you actually look at the history of when electricity or the steamship were first invented, in the case of the latter, it took about 80 years before the economic model worked out. In the case of the former, I think it was more like 50 or 60. And just because somebody could turn a light in their house and switch, didn't mean that the business model or the sociocultural capabilities could capitalize on it. And I worry that there's more than a regulatory problem here. I think that we have a societal problem, which is why we're in a mess politically as well. When nobody looks at the system that we all are, those Americans in the room are voting with every year, every other year, every 4 years, and saying it makes sense, but it's not changing. So I
I guess the two questions that come out of that is, I think we're all seeing it as revolutionary, but over what period of time? Is it 4 years? I don't think it'll be 60 years, but is it 20 years? And then secondly, what should people be thinking in tandem with the breakthrough work that you're doing to move the needle on all these other blockages?
That's a very good question. I think I have no choice but to address this, especially the electricity point, which was amazing. I always like to say that, so people often say that AI is the new electricity, to just shine the spotlight on the importance of it. But I would dare to say that electricity is the new electricity, because guess what? None of the work that we do would be viable without the surge of power that we need and the amount of actual, basically, data centers that need to go up, that need to be powered by actual electricity. So we have that as a problem of scale. But at Verneek, our business model was the polar opposite of the rest of the market, which is precisely one of the many reasons as to why we don't pursue AGI. Look, as an AI scientist, I would even argue that AGI is a myth. Even as human beings, we are not general, if you will. We are all little experts at everything that we do. And people can disagree on what even AGI means, even if you think it's a valid goal to have. But back to LLMs and their, of course, implications on the electricity and other things side, and other societal, by the way, issues. Whether or not the business model scales, whether or not, to your point, maybe give it enough time, it will be sustainable, which is not the topic of conversation. We have to think about other ramifications of this revolution, right? So there's so much positivity, which is the name of our game. We are all about helping. Literally, the mission statement of our company, as you've seen it now, is to build the most helpful AI. But the truth is, there are bad actors who deploy the same AIs with the same level of intelligence to just do bad things in the world. And the question is, what are the other actors in the society doing to help prevent that at scale? There's so much disinformation, so much misinformation. Kat, you mentioned the CHRO lens. The truth is, the job displacement is happening at the most rapid pace, right? And this is something that I don't think enterprises are thinking about it critically enough. Like, we are at the cusp of helping add so much efficiency to a lot of different job functions within retail industry and large, basically, enterprises out there. But I see that when the reorg is happening at scale, it's not being done thoughtfully, right? What do you do to basically reskill them, to upskill them, to make sure that the bottom line of the society actually is not tarnished by this revolution? So there's so many things to think about critically. But back to what we do. This is the most thrilling time of my life, because we could never do things at the scale that we did. And I think if enough people pursue the good things that we can get out of it to kind of oppose the bad, ultimately we can net gain a lot out of this revolution, and all look back and say, well, finally we did something better than social media.
Yeah, and I'm going to add one point, which is the infrastructure of the internet proceeded at a ROI level. Cisco didn't go out there and go, let's just lay the place down with networking, and it just proceeded because they were the arms dealer of the internet. That's not what's actually happening here. The private money and the arms dealer of this transformational time are spending trillions of dollars. And so one thing that we do know about humankind is that there are two conditions that drive enormous innovation: scarcity and abundance. When you're in the middle, it's sort of like, meh, it's sort of, and we're not in scarcity right now. We're starting to drive towards better chips, better. Soon we're going to be in a state of AI enablement, which is abundance. And that is where I think we're going to see the things that we fear today about society in a level of abundance. I don't think that, I wouldn't try to predict what they are, but I think you're seeing innovation that is moving. I personally have kind of a 4 to 5 year time frame, because I'm part of that land grab about putting data centers that are AI into the ground and know what is going to come there. And so I think that there's going to be, a lot more innovation to come. I personally have my thesis that it's going to be verticalized integration, because to know a business and understand a business, you can't have one LLM horizontal that rules them all. The second part of your question, which I think is fascinating, scares the hell out of me, because it's not just political issues in one place. It's how they are morphing into the globe. And abundance in one environment of a technology that is this powerful, we don't know what that's going to look like, because we saw the internet come up across the world, and I think we're not seeing that same abundance in all places. So I think not that it's going to be fun to watch, but it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah. I would just recommend the book by, probably many of you have read it, Nexus by Hariri. It's a very good book about I mean, he makes a lot of analogies with religions in the past and things like that. I really recommend it because it helps you. It's a bit frightening, to be honest.
I was just going to ask if I'm going to feel better about the world.
No, you're not. But you're going to think differently.
No, you are going to think differently. You're going to understand it better, but you're definitely not going to feel better.
Okay. Thanks for ending with that. Do we have any final questions or comments? Just tell us who you are, please.
Value retail. Adoption, right? You talk about the cross-functional teams. We touch on, is anyone from HR here? How have you approached kind of wide-scale adoption, right? Because I think, in breaking those silos, there are folks that from like HR departments that don't know the power of AI or having an enterprise level, application, how that can help an organization. How have you approached it, on your side?
Can I just tell you, I personally think that the answer to that has a lot to do with the culture of the company that you're sitting in. And as a technologist, I'm not that good with people. I'm just going to say zeros and ones, keyboard to glass, that's my relationship right there. But following and understanding culture, who makes decisions, how those things flow out, it is super important to become a student of that inside of a company in order to understand how something disruptive gets in. I spent most of my career in highly disruptive digital technology transformation. And it was way different in the automotive industry than it was in pharmaceuticals or in retail. And but one thing that I know is absolutely true is that this concept of being paired instead of single-threaded, being paired is important. I take your note, which is maybe it's even more than just a couple, but getting the same idea and prioritization on something that's going to advance together actually isn't slower. It actually allows a breadth in anything that is a complex enterprise organization. But what's your experience?
Yeah, I would say, I think adoption is a good question. I would say the way to make it happen in terms of adoption is, of course, your company has a mission. That mission is defined how it wants to change the world, what it